Good Friday morning. Taking a big breath there. It's been a very busy, hectic morning, and I'm already out of breath, even though I just had a little bit of a break. But we're back. This is 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. I'm Tim Radford, and joining me as usual, I say usually, I sometimes say as always, but sometimes
not always.
He skips and gets mad at me and stomp. No, Sheriff Derek Palmer, you had a busy week last week, I understand.
Yeah, it's been busy the last little bit, but it's good. We're under control.
I understand you had a technology-free period there last Friday.
A little bit.
How was it? I haven't been that way in a while.
Yeah, it was good. Just take a few days off and be away from the phone and be away from the internet and be away from everything. And I spent Friday through Sunday just kind of doing a Christian retreat and was just kind of away from everything else. And it was just good to have some time alone. And
then when you got your phone back, how many text messages were waiting on you to respond to?
A few.
Yeah. I think you told me.
I believe there was one or two on there.
One or two. Yeah, I remember Derek mentioning when we first started doing this show that everybody in the county has a cell phone number just about.
They do. I really do think that I'm probably one of the most accessible sheriffs around. I talk about in the sheriff's conferences to the other sheriffs about, the Facebook and my cell phone, and people texting me and calling, and they're like, everybody else is like, are you crazy? Because they all keep their cell phones personal, and don't publish their numbers, and they don't have Facebook pages and all those kind of things. But I just assume go ahead, if you got a problem or an issue, let's go ahead and talk about it and get it done.
I'm that way, and I'm not sheriff. A handful of people have my cell phone number, but that's about it.
Right,
And
but that can be bad sometimes. I mean, it can be bad on occasion when you have there's some folks out there that you're just not going to make happy. You're just not going to. They're just not going to be content, and they don't care to blow your phone up on text messaging or Facebook or whatever in the middle of the night. So
sometimes you just have to take time and spend with yourself and your family, and just have some me time away from technology, because it is amazing how much time we spend looking at our phones now.
It is. It's amazing. And last night I went to my nephew's house, and I pulled down my driveway, and I realized I didn't have my cell phone with me, and Cindy was like, do you want to turn around and go back and get it? And I'm like, nah, it'll be okay for a few hours. Let's just go on and it'll be all right. So there's times you're going to have to just get away from it and just have a little personal time.
Well, we've had a fun week. This is April already, April 7th.
By the way, I saw your April 1st post. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. A local radio owner jailed for being too smart and too good looking.
Yeah, I believe that's what it said.
Yeah, something like that. And it's a problem I've had all my life.
Yeah, and I can see that.
I did not realize it was an arrestable offense. So being this smart and being that good looking, and just really, I encourage everyone to just be plain and average and just try to fit in.
Right. If you can't be plain, just be Tim. Right.
That's right. Yeah. I wondered how many people would click on that, think that I had actually got arrested, but luckily that $2 million bond was.
Well, I started reading that, and I thought, where's Tim going with this?
It was one of those things, if you've read down this far, you know this is an April Fool's prank. So I'm glad you saw that and found humor.
Yeah,
I was going to use your name, but I thought I better not use his name.
That's fine. Everybody else does.
Without his consent. So it was one of those last-minute April Fool's pranks. Right. All right. Tell us what's going on at the sheriff's office this week.
Well, it's just the same old things. I mean, we're trying to fight drugs every time we turn around, and breaking and entering seem to be down a little bit. Larceny seemed to be down. We're thankful for that. But in addition to that, it seems like drugs are never ending. You reach a point where you think you're making some headway, and you take some main players out, and somebody's always ready to come back and take over.
And you mentioned that, and there was a significant arrest, a press release that was shared last night on your Facebook page. It was an April 4th arrest of a man who was, arrested for trafficking in heroin.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest problems we've
It's one of our biggest issues here in the county. I know methamphetamine's always bad, and it's been bad and will continue to be bad, but we're having people that's overdosing like crazy on heroin. We've had some deaths attributed to heroin overdose. We've had several people that have overdosed on heroin, but they used Narcan or something of that nature that brought them back from dying. The hospital, we were at the hospital the other day, and a lot of people don't realize this, but if you go to the hospital on an overdose, it's not a mandatory report. They don't mandatorily report it to law enforcement. So you could go there for an overdose, be treated and released, and we wouldn't know about it because they don't report it. But when having this conversation with the hospital the other day, one of the charge nurses reported that there's some days we're seeing 4 and 5 overdoses a day coming into the hospital.
Really?
And
I had no idea it was that high.
So it's getting way up there. But this heroin that's in our area is one of our prevailing problems that we're trying to stop and trying to figure out, how we can combat this. This investigation that we did was about a 4-month investigation on this particular person, and we spent a lot of time and effort and energy on this. And when we talk about 4 months, we're talking about almost four months, day and night, 7 days a week. I mean, we're talking about continual surveillance, different surveillance techniques. We're talking about physical time of stopping cars and interviewing people, and and just doing all kind of different things to try to get to the main dealers. And actually, the amount that was seized of heroin was the 3rd largest that was ever taken to the Western Crime Lab here in North Carolina. So it was a significant amount of heroin that we caught this individual with. And so it was a good day for us to try to stop some of this from reaching the streets. But as we acknowledge, we know that it's just a matter of time, that somebody else is going to step into place and take over. And we got a significant bond on that too.
It's like $1 million bond.
Yeah, there's a $1 million bond that they set on that.
And again, as the sheriff always mentioned, that's not a punishment. That's not a penalty, but that is a flight risk situation. Correct?
It is, because of the nature of the charges and the amount of drugs it seized and the circumstances that led up around it was a high enough felony to where the magistrates felt like it was a significant flight risk. So they set that bond to a place where it would be secure to be shown up in court if he did make bond.
All right, let's see. There was heroin. I'm just trying to skim this press release. And the folks who want to read that, you can go either to WKRK's Facebook or the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office Facebook, and it's posted there. I was out of town last night, so I just shared it directly off of your page instead of doing a news report on my page. But it looks like it was in a ranger community, 99 guns were seized, rifles, shotguns, 7 handguns, nearly $7,000 in currency, gift cards, and approximately 32 grams of heroin and 12 quarts of non-tax paid liquor.
Right.
I'm guessing moonshine.
Yeah. They, people don't realize this, but the way heroin is used, they call it points, and a dosage unit is a point, and that point is 1/10 of 1 gram. So within a gram of heroin, you can use 10 different uses of that. Well, this was 32 grams of that, and so 320 hits. And so, like I said, the crime lab, that Western Carolina Crime Lab, said it's only the 3rd largest that they have seen out there, that typically you don't see people with that amount of heroin putting it on the street. It's usually a much smaller amount. Usually when we deal with heroin, we're dealing with a gram or less.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that is 32 times the normal amount.
Yeah.
Of all the drugs out there right now, which one would you say locally is the biggest killer of people?
I would say that heroin's right up there with that. If you want to take all drugs into consideration, I would think that their prescription pills would be pretty close to that. But a lot of your prescription pills are heroin derivatives. They're opioids.
And I don't think people realize what a big problem the prescription pill industry has become.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons why in this area that we've seen heroin explode like we have, is because not just here locally but nationwide, there has been a movement of trying to put a lid on the opioids that are being prescribed to people. Doctors are being held more accountable for what they're prescribing and what they're putting out there. And so as the opioid pills become harder and harder to get your hands on, heroin becomes easier and easier, and people will just move into that pure heroin instead of using the opioid.
And Mark was on the show last week, and he said the price in heroin has come down, which is attracting people to buy that.
Yeah.
And that's not a commercial to go buy heroin either,
Right.
but that's just a reality of what's
It
going
is.
on.
It's actually cheaper for the dosage unit and money-wise. It's cheaper to use heroin than it is for methamphetamine. And so a lot of people are using that heroin, and some people are using it in combination of using the heroin and the methamphetamine together. We did get a report back from the state crime lab today that said that the heroin that was seized was tested positive for fentanyl inside the heroin. Mm-hmm. It was mixed with fentanyl, which is another powerful narcotic. And so fentanyl can be absorbed through the skin. It can be absorbed if you touch it. So there was a safety bulletin went out within our office of when you're dealing with this, doing searches, and you have suspected heroin, that you can, just by touching it, you can seep through your skin and have a contact high through that. And you can actually overdose on fentanyl just by touching it, just by having it on your hand. So we've had to put that safety bulletin out with all the officers so they understand that when they're coming in contact with this, to use safety precautions, to use gloves, and if you have possible, to use breathing apparatuses and things to cover your mouth, so you're not inhaling dust or anything off of the heroin itself that would contain fentanyl.
A lot of people aren't very familiar with the whole process. A lot of people that are listening have never ever been arrested here. Suppose that you have arrested me for
Right.
selling this much heroin.
Right.
What is the process from the point of arrest to the point of being found guilty or not guilty? What does a person have to go through to get to that point?
Well, the first thing that has to happen is that if you're arrested, say on a felony charge, any charge, but in this case a felony, your first step is the statute says to take you immediately in front of a magistrate without delay or other judicial official. It don't have to be a magistrate, but you have to go in front of a judicial official without delay. When you go in front of that judicial official, then you have to, as an officer, we have to give an account of why we think you've committed a crime, give the circumstances behind it, and then the magistrate or other judicial official will make that determination whether we found probable cause there was a crime that occurred.
So is that a one-on-one situation with a judge?
That's
or?
a one-on-one situation with
Okay.
the judge, and the suspects there too also most of the time. So it has an opportunity to talk to the judge about the circumstances around it, why you feel like they've committed a crime, why you made the arrest, and the judge will make a determination whether the elements of that crime was met and whether there is probable cause to believe that person did commit a crime.
Does this happen before or after booked into the detention center?
It usually it's a combination. It's usually during the process of booking. But you can, we are to take them in front of that magistrate without delay. The booking process, the detention center, it kind of goes along in conjunction with that. Through the fingerprint process, the photographs, the biographical information, all those type of things. If a bond is set by that magistrate where you're going to stay in jail, then you go through a medical screening, detox situation there if needed. And so you kind of go through a medical process in the medical area of the jail before you're ever put into population with other people. So there's a whole process there within the jail that you go through. Once all that kind of part of it is done, then files are put together and submitted electronically to the district attorney's office, where it goes into what they call a discovery packet. And that discovery packet that goes to the district attorney's office is then issued back out to any attorneys or anybody that's going to represent the client. Anybody whether it's court appointed or whether it's someone hired an attorney to represent them, then that packet goes out to that attorney and to the people that's representing them. It's to create fairness so that there's no secret surprise thing that happens at trial, that the district attorney can kind of keep something in their pocket and not tell anybody till it comes out. By law, they have to divulge to the defense attorney everything they have and what they're going to present at trial. If it's a felony charge, there's two ways that can happen to go to trial. One is they can either have what they call a probable cause hearing in district court. All cases go to district court, even felony cases. And if it's a felony case in district court, they can have a probable cause hearing with a district court judge to see if there's enough evidence to go to superior court for a trial. They can waive that if a client would like to waive that and say, no, I just want to be a trial in front of my peers. They can waive that probable cause hearing and go straight into superior court. Or they could say, no, I want that probable cause hearing, and then at which time the district attorney in district court can either have that probable cause hearing, or they could just outright dismiss the case in district court if they didn't want to reveal what they had at that time.
Right.
In the event that they did not have a probable cause hearing, or they dismissed it in district court, then what would happen at that point? That evidence would be presented to a grand jury. A jury of 16 people who served for a year would be brought in front of that grand jury, and that grand jury would determine if there's probable cause to go to Superior Court. So you can get to Superior Court one of two ways. You can either have a probable cause hearing in district or a grand jury. You could go either route. A lot of people think because things get dismissed out of district court that they've gotten away with it, and that's not necessarily true, because it could be dismissed out but going to have a grand jury indictment later.
Okay.
Once that grand jury finds them that there is probable cause for Superior Court, then it's scheduled for trial in Superior Court. And then they do what they do in court at that point, as far as plea negotiations, or set things for trial, or not guilty or guilty pleas, and it takes that turn there. But the whole process can last a while.
I was going to ask about what kind of time frame are we looking at there?
If a person would like to just go, if they say, I'm guilty, I did it, I just want to take my punishment and go on with life, it could be as recent as a month or two. If it's something they want to fight and contest, it could be years before it ever gets to a trial in court. Yeah.
That's a long process to go through, and a lot of people spend their lives going through that over and over again because of repeat crimes. And I know on TV, people usually either see the very first stage of it, the arrest part, on the TV dramas, or the last part, the court part, but they don't see all that in between.
Right.
So that's the part that I kind of wanted to bring out to light, that there's so much that goes on between point A and the very last point.
There's a lot that happens through that. And like I say, we have several people that's in jail right now that's on there for murder charges, that's been there for years. We've got several there that's been nearly 6 years, since they've been charged, still awaiting a trial. And people say, well, how can you do that? That shouldn't take that long. Well, I agree it shouldn't. But it's not always the court. It's not always the prosecutor. Sometimes the defense attorneys delay things and keep putting it down because of building cases and waiting for evidence to come back from labs, and interviewing people that didn't get interviewed first, and the defense attorneys trying to build their cases. So sometimes it's continued because the defense attorney is asking it to be continued. So it's not always the prosecutor's fault, or it's not always law enforcement fault.
I think you've mentioned on a previous show too that people that have gone through this several times, they know some of the tricks and of the trade, I guess.
Yeah, and one thing about that is, if you've been charged with a crime and you're out on bond and you commit another crime, sometimes they'll continue that case, put your two cases together, and set it for a trial down the road somewhere. And then if you keep committing crimes, sometimes that just keeps getting delayed down the road as they're consolidating things.
Just buying time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you're a very open-minded sheriff who's always probably taking a lot of calls and either criticism, complaints, and things like that. What are some of the things that you have actually listened to people that have called and either had suggestions or complained about something that you thought, that's a really good idea? Has anything like that happened since you've been
Well, there's
sheriff?
been a few things. Things like coverage issues, areas that need to be more patrolled and needs to be covered a little bit more than what we have been. Sometimes when I hear what people are saying that's going on in their communities, it might spark moving shifts a little bit, or sending people to a different area for a while. Drug houses in certain areas, of people call in and it's a ongoing issue, then it may be something that moves a little farther to the top of the list that we need to spend more time here. A lot of those type of things are very important that the community lets us know about, so we can shift the way we do things. A lot of the things as far as protocol and procedure, it's pretty much things we can't change. It's stuff that we have to do, And so we a lot of that, very few of those things are changed, but a lot of the way we do it, a lot of our coverage areas and what we're looking at and how we're investigating things sometimes change depending on community input and what they say about it.
I know a lot of people probably just called a vent because they're angry. They're in a very emotional state. They've either had a family member that's been arrested or they've been arrested, and they just call to, I guess, vent and complain. I'm sure you get plenty of that.
Most of the complaints we get, now there's always exceptions, of course, but most of what we get, I would say 90% plus of what we get, is not that the officers did anything wrong or not that the sheriff's office did anything wrong. It's usually that people don't understand. They don't understand the process. They don't understand the laws, what the law says you have to do. A lot of it is just misunderstanding and confusion is where most of the complaints come from.
And they get angry when they don't understand what's going on.
And they do. And there's a lot of things that make sense to me and makes sense to you that it should be this way and we should do things this way. But unfortunately, sometimes things that legislation passes don't make sense. And even though it may be common sense that we should be able to do this, because legislation have passed laws and have set regulations and guidelines to do things, it goes right opposite of what we would think would be common sense. And so when people call in, they may have the idea that the sheriff's office is being lazy or they're just not doing their job, and they don't understand that because of the rules and regulations and guidelines, it can't be done that way. It has to be done a different way. Right. And that's hard for people to accept a lot of times. It's hard for them to understand.
I know a lot of crimes happen because of just they're crimes of opportunity. What are some things that people can watch out as far as being victims of those opportunistic, that's not a word, but crime?
Well, one thing is I think we need to be a little bit more vigilant, and I'm guilty myself a lot of times, but just simple things. I was at the grocery store the other day and was going down the aisle shopping, and I noticed this lady next to me. She had her pocketbook sitting in her buggy and had walked 8 or 10 feet off to get something else and just left her pocketbook sitting there. People getting out of their cars at the gas station and running in for just a minute, leaving the car running, their door open.
I've seen that quite a bit too.
I mean, there's a lot of things like that we feel like we live in a quiet community, and we feel like that we live in a place that we're relatively safe, and we've jumped out of our car 100 times and nothing's ever happened. So we really don't expect our car to be the one stolen, So I think just being a little bit more vigilant about the way we're doing things and paying a little bit more attention about what's going on, and just really looking at our surroundings,
I was watching a video from one of the Atlanta TV stations this past week, and a lady was pumping gas. Her door was open on her car, her driver's door, and a man just made himself at home, got in his car, and she was pumping gas. She thought quickly she was just spraying him with gas, so filling her car full of gas. But he still got away. He drug her quite a ways, but he just stole her car while she's in there broad daylight pumping gas.
And one of the issues that we have, I think, here in Cherokee County that we've not had to deal with until recent days is the fact that we are having an ever-increasing homeless situation of people who don't have a home for themselves, a place that they're not renting or a home that they've purchased, and they're just kind of traveling from place to place and from house to house and car to car, and some are living outdoors, living under bridges, living in tents, some are living in their vehicles, some are just crashing with whoever let them stay. And so we're seeing that more and more and more in Cherokee County. And one of the problems is when you see a lot of that and it keeps growing, then you see those opportunistic crimes growing also with that, because they don't have a home, they don't have a place to stay, they don't have anything. So grabbing a few bucks out of a pocketbook or taking something real quick when somebody's not looking or taking a vehicle because they need to get somewhere else, those things we see a lot of that kind of increasing because of what it is.
What would you say an estimate would be for our homeless population in Cherokee County right now?
I would be scared to say. I know that I could probably name off 20 people or so, right now that I know of that are living in their cars, living in tents, living under bridges or whatever. But I know there's a lot more than that because of you have situations where people have moved back home with mom and dad and they're living in the basement and they're living in the garage, they're living in the shed out back or whatever, but it's not their place. And they're staying there on a temporary basis until they can find something else. So if you want to look at the term homeless, that would fall into that category. And so I would say as far as those that's actually living under bridges and living in tents are not that high, I would say that when you include the other situation of living in your automobiles, living in people's basements, living in sheds out back and vacant homes and those things, the numbers really start getting up there at that point.
And the homeless situation, that's not limited just to adults either. There are some children too that are without homes.
There are some homeless children that by law or by definition are considered homeless that's within our school system that we know of.
All right. Well, I can see our time is starting to go away with us. What else do you want to talk about today before we close out our show? I know we've talked about it quite a bit so far. This show always goes by so fast.
It does. I do want to say it looks like the temperatures are coming back up this week, and going to be back up around 80 by Monday. And so I just want to encourage people, not to get out there and overdo it. It's going to be pretty. People are going to be out in their yards working, planting gardens, things like that. Whenever that warm weather starts coming back, we start seeing a lot of those, like the heat exhaustion, heart issues and breathing issues and stuff like that. So, and as the sun comes back, I'm sure there will be pollen flying everywhere and kind of asthmatic issues and those type of things. So kind of take it easy, step in there slowly, and I know we've got work to do. I've got work to do at my house, but let's not overdo it.
And we've had a pretty mild winter this winter, so we're kind of expecting insect population and reptile population. So the sheriff may see some extra snakes around his house.
I hope not.
But
I won't see them for long if I do.
Don't be out there in the woods and not paying attention. Kind of be aware of your surroundings, because people may be getting some bee stings or ticks and things like that, and of course any kind of venomous snake is. What should they do if they get a snake bite? Cry. I don't know. Not what you would do. I'm just kidding.
No, really, the medical treatment for that is really just getting to the hospital as soon as possible. Identifying what type of snake it is.
What if you can't identify it?
If possible, and like I say, sometimes it's not possible, but if possible, the hospital actually does recommend, the health department recommends killing the snake and bringing it with you. Mm-hmm. They really do recommend that, so they can do a positive identification.
And everybody has a camera phone too.
Right.
Now,
and like I say, if you don't want to carry a snake in your car with you, which I probably wouldn't.
Yes, you do.
No, I probably would not. Take a picture of it with your cell phone. Get some positive identification, because depending on what type of snake it is, they have to treat you differently. So that's one of the questions they're going to ask you when you get to the hospital.
Should they try to remove the venom from the scene that happened?
There's controversy over that. Some people say you should, some say you shouldn't. The latest that's out there says no, leave it alone.
And same with the tourniquet, right?
Right, yeah. The latest that's out, used to they'd say use a tourniquet and split it and let the poison drain. But the latest medical journals that's coming out saying no, leave it alone and get to the hospital as soon as possible.
Growing up, my dad had this little thing called a snake bite kit, and it had these
little
suction cups. Yeah, he carried that with him everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, he got bit one time by a copperhead, and he said the scariest part of that situation was riding to the hospital, person driving him.
Yeah, but like I say, that treatment is controversial. You can Google it, and you'll have some say do one thing, and some say do the other. So. It's, I guess, whatever you feel comfortable doing or whatever you feel like you need to do.
And if it's a non-poisonous snake, no need to go to a hospital, but
I would still probably go.
Yeah.
Because there are some other issues that come from that as far as infections and different things. For me, I'd probably have some heart trouble after that.
I'm sure.
But there are some infections and some other things that can come from that. So I would say still go to the hospital and still get treated.
The sheriff loves talking about snakes.
It's one of my favorite topics.
All right, Sheriff, thank you very much. Yeah. We appreciate your time, and I guess we'll do this again next week.
I'll plan on being here.
Same time, same place, 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am.